Right into it. We're doing it right away. Hello, what's going on? Welcome to the Wrestling Mat. We skipped right over the intro today just because, I don't know, there's only so much time to talk about everything in a short period of time, and I welcome you into the Wrestling Mat. It is 1 o'clock Eastern Time if you're watching it live. If not, we appreciate you whenever you're watching the show, whenever you're watching the live show, whenever you go back to watch previous episodes. Maybe you're watching some clips of the show. I don't know. There might be a few that hit the internet today. I'm getting yelled at by people on Twitter, which is great because they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And 108. I could have waited a little longer. Like my Bret Hart cup. It's great. Bret Hart. Now there's a guy I understand. I appreciate the honesty of a Bret Hart. Absolutely. What a hero. Speaking of Bret Hart, by the way, did you know that he is one of my favorite wrestlers from growing up? Did you know that? Well, I'll just tell you. You can learn a lot more about that because in the next couple of days, if you are a member here at the WrestlingMatShow.com, you're getting some bonus content. Yes, you want some bonus content? You're getting some bonus content from me and from us here at the Wrestling Mat. Coming up later on today, for those in the Matt Camper level and the Matt Event level, you're going to get my top 5 John Cena matches of all time. There's the levels. This is what you get. There it is in the middle. You get members-only videos. That's coming your way. That's coming your way tomorrow. My top 5, today at 5 Eastern, my top 5 John Cena matches of all time. Also coming your way tomorrow, a little something different. We like to talk about why we became wrestling fans, why we're still wrestling fans, and how important nostalgia is. I talk about my top 5 wrestlers growing up, and I'd love to hear yours in the comments on those videos. And if you're not a Matt member, you can sign up right now at the WrestlingMatShow.com. And you know what else you can do on this show right now if you are live in our YouTube chat? And hello to Nerdy Dude, one of the top Matt members out there, maybe number one. What you can do, because it really set the tone for yesterday's episode, you can send any question you want with a super chat. A super chat, whether it's within the context of what we're talking about. There's a little fallout from a couple of things I've said this week, whether it be about the bump yesterday, whether it be about Roman Reigns and Matt Riddle, because that conversation seems to be taking off, whether it be us talking about Dynamite today as they head into All In. If you have a question that you want answered, you want a topic that you want me to talk about, like yesterday with my lack of chemistry with my old co-host, that would not have happened. That conversation would not have happened without your super chats, without you guys chiming in. What do you want to hear? This is the most interactive pro wrestling show out there because I want to listen to you, because I love our community, and because I get to do that. What's up to Joseph? What's up to Nerdy Dude? How are you all out there? Hit us up in the chat. Make sure you follow us on social media at WrestlingMat23, on Twitter, on Instagram. Hit me up at the Matt Camp. I've gotten a few of those tweets today. I've gotten some texts from Stamford, Connecticut today saying thank you. What? I'm the only one with that opinion? Oh, no, I'm not the only one with those opinions. I can't believe that. How about that? We're getting into it. I had someone who used to work there is already mad at me, which is hilarious. Listen, you don't have to lick the boots when you leave. It's okay. Because what do we do here on this show? We talk about what's good in pro wrestling. We talk about what needs to be criticized in pro wrestling. We do it constructively for any company at any time. And we're going to be doing that today. I have some good things to say about Dynamite. I have some things I think could have been fixed on Dynamite last night. No wrestling show is perfect. I'm not perfect. But when we do these shows, we have a lot to talk about and a lot to get into. So, hello to everybody out there. Make sure you're getting your questions in. Make sure you're getting anything that you want me to see or hear. Get it in the chat. Hit us up in the comment section after the fact. Tomorrow's episode, I'll give you a little teaser on that because we have so much content coming out. So much content. More shorts, more videos are going up. No better time to sign up now at thewrestlingmatshow.com as a member, to subscribe, to share it. Yes. In addition, before we get into today's show, still coming up this month, we are going to be doing a members-only Ask Me Anything. So there's another chance to ask me about anything you want to. That's going to be coming up on August 26th, right after a live edition of the Wrestling Mat. Soon as that's over at 1 Eastern Live, when we're done, we're going right into the members-only Ask Me Anything. That is coming up later on this month. Also coming up later on this month, we're going to do a watch along of a past wrestling event, currently leaning towards a certain Raw from a certain European country back in the Attitude Era. And we will be announcing who gets the special 30-minute one-on-one Zoom from me in the Matt Eventers membership level. So all of that stuff is available for you. Tomorrow's show, I'm going to be kind of taking a look at what the comments have been saying on our clips, on our videos. The Montez Ford one seems to still be getting a lot of traction. A lot of people still talking about that. We're going to talk about those comments. We're going to talk about other comments from videos about Kevin Owens, about CM Punk, about The Bump. Something I wanted to get into, which I guess I brought the story out there, not thinking it would really make headlines, but I talked about recently how Roman Reigns was on The Bump. And this was about our discussion of baby faces and who's available for media and who does media. And Roman, as a heel, did not do a lot of media. He did some media. He would do big media. But there was a presentation to Roman Reigns and something that I would say was always Roman in character. Always wanted to talk about his character or within the character. And him and Paul always had that figured out. Very, very meticulously planned and thought through. And I always appreciated that. But about a year after his, tribal chief run started, he came on The Bump. And I talked about, we only got him on because he had these Shady Ray sunglasses. And they were Roman Reigns Shady Ray sunglasses. So we came on to promote, and we got him for 10 minutes. The only other time he had come on the show, he was doing a Make-A-Wish giveaway, Babyface run. I believe it was February 2020. So we had him on twice. But the second time he came on for the Shady Rays thing. And, he was at, some beautiful place that he lives in, I think in Florida, had like an outdoor shower. I mean, he looked like the man. And he acted like it, and it was great to play off of him that way. And something that had happened, or I guess I would say a precaution that was taken, was that we had Riddle in studio, and we didn't bring Riddle on right away. We didn't feel the need to have any interaction between Matt Riddle and Roman Reigns. And then Riddle came on after in studio, and Roman was done. And we talked to Riddle and had the episode with Riddle. And I didn't bring this up, and maybe some people went back and found that episode. Damian Priest was on that episode as well, and he called in. Now, Riddle and Priest, and I don't know where the relationship stands now, at the time, were very good friends. So that interaction worked. That was a good back and forth there. But as we said, we didn't feel the need for Matt Riddle, who I think people know, certainly know now, could be unreliable. Later that day, after he was on The Bump, he went on another show somewhere. He was doing media in New York, and he said stuff about Roman he shouldn't have said. Talked about the top guy in a way he shouldn't have talked about him. And then, and I know there were multiple issues there. And then, yes, they didn't work together. They didn't work on pay-per-view together in Las Vegas, almost like maybe they were supposed to, and then they didn't. They ran that match on a SmackDown. But I always said about Matt Riddle, it's the sign that's up in a construction site. It's the sign that's up in a factory. This many days since our last accident. And to me, Riddle was always this many days since Riddle fucked up again. And how often did that clock get reset? How often did that counter get reset? So I will say that everybody involved in that decision of not putting Riddle on at the same time with Roman was correct, because he screwed up like 3 hours after the fact. And the last time, there you go. Let's add on to all this. The last time Riddle came on The Bump, which was probably, within 6 months of his release, he basically was like, yeah, I'll probably get released soon anyway. Like, he knew where he stood. He knew that his time might be coming to a close, and that maybe he wasn't seen in the same light anymore. Because there was a time when that dude was super over, and there was a chance he could have, if he kept his shit together, really gotten to the top. He was over. People liked him. The stuff with Randy was good. I think he did well in the Thunderdome era. I think he did well after that. but he was the guy that would get in his own way. There is, I just thought of this. When we did watch-alongs during the pandemic, they were Zoom watch-alongs. So we would have anybody who wasn't on the card. And remember, some of those pandemic Thunderdome pay-per-views didn't have big cards. We would book people. So we did for SummerSlam when Roman came back. Here you go. Great example of not putting Riddle and Roman together a year later. And we had the combo of Matt Riddle and Elias on for the main event of SummerSlam in 2020, which was The Fiend against Braun Strowman. And as we all know, who came back at the end of that? Roman Reigns. So the entire time Riddle's on, he is surrounded by all these random people. Like, not his family, nothing like that. Like, random people, like this cavalcade of I don't know who the hell they are, who they were to him. Somebody was the chicken man. And it felt like, okay, this could get off the rails at any point. And it's hard to control that when you're sitting, like I am now, looking at a webcam with my co-host at the time. I think Popola did it with me, and I think maybe Evan was on or whatever. You can't, like... You can't fix the conversation. So you're trying to navigate this, and I'm getting texts as Riddle's going on and on. It's getting a little dicey. You know, what's he going to say? And I think he cursed a couple times, and I'm getting texts from people who are monitoring this that are very high up in WWE Digital going, hey, this is great. Oh, be careful here. And I'm going, like, I'm waiting for them to, like, let me pull the plug on this because it was about to, it felt like at any point in time, something very bad was going to happen. And we're having fun with Elias and Riddle, and they're, you know, at least Elias kind of let Riddle do his thing, and Elias was somewhere else. He had his guitar. And then what happens is Roman comes out. And Riddle reacts like, oh, he goes, well, there goes my push. And he said something, he was like, something about Bruce. And I, like, direct it right away. I'm like, Bruce Springsteen, Elias, you know what he's talking about. And this was not a time where you talked about those things. This was not WrestleMania this year where Cody wins and it's let's wipe the Vince era completely off the mat. Here comes Triple H. Let's bring Bruce out. Let's bring out the creative guys who booked this all to happen. Let's have a big celebration. No, this was not that time at all. You didn't bring up Bruce. You didn't bring up creative. There goes my push. Live on WWE programming. Not major WWE programming, but still WWE programming. You didn't do that. And Riddle said a lot of dumb stuff, and yeah, he could be funny at times, but I think we all have seen the many missteps he's had, and it caused him to leave the company, and now he's in other places. So sometimes you play defense that way, and it's smart. And because of Riddle's reputation, we did not want to put him on the same show as Roman Reigns. The juice was not worth the squeeze there. The bad outweighed the good, and we ended up being correct about that. And I see a lot of people have picked up on that story. I credit everybody who was working on the bump for being smart about that. That made a lot of sense. Now, in addition to that conversation that we've had this week, which you can go back and watch at thewrestlingmatchshow.com, I talked about why the bump ended, at least for now. It hasn't been on in months, okay? Whatever iteration that used to exist, I think it's fair to say, is in the past. And who knows? Does it come back? You know, do they figure out something else with who they have there? I don't know. I know those people are still employed. Somebody asked me about this, and two people I did not bring up yesterday. One is Sam. I got a text from Sam. I haven't spoken to him since then. Whatever. I don't know what he knew when he sent me that text or what he didn't know. Okay. And Ryan. I've talked to Ryan plenty. And I don't want anybody to, sometimes there's that omission where you're like, well, did they talk to you? Yeah. He was on the ringer yesterday, which was very cool to see. A nice spot for him as he continues to do the Raw sidecast on Monday nights. But I don't regret a word I said yesterday. And there was a level of it being cathartic to me yesterday. I am usually someone who ignores when people have wronged me and they don't really matter in my life anymore. But I had gotten enough questions about it, not in the chat, from people who recognize stuff. And I thought it needed to be addressed because it is the one thing that I hadn't talked about. I also thought it was interesting that it really hadn't come up in the public forum for 6 months, which might tell you something about that person. And nobody really cared. But I was amused at the amount of people who were like, oh, I did notice you two had no chemistry. I was like, yeah, it's hard to hide that. It's hard to hide that. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And I've done shows with people that I haven't had chemistry before in various media, not just WWE. And I will tell you, I can't think of anybody else in WWE that I didn't I guess I would say anybody else I worked with, we found some kind of working relationship. Some people I got along with more than others. Some people I was more friendly with more. And that's just people's personalities, and that's fine. And you need that sometimes. Let me get that clear. You don't want all the same. You don't want all the same mindset. You need to have conversation and argument. Me and Peter Rosberg are completely different people. I actually thought that kind of worked. I thought Sam and I were very similar. But I think Rosenberg and I were different, and we would bring different things to the table. There's someone who absolutely reached out to me. I like doing stuff with him. And we were never close or anything like that, but anytime we worked together, he was a pro, and we worked together, and he would defer to me to things, and I would defer to him on things, and that's how it gets done, and that's why he's still there. That's why he's doing a walk and talk with Damian Priest. And he's got a hell of a following. And I know that goes a long way in current day WWE. That absolutely means something. It's why they can get bigger name celebrities now, and they're not getting random people sometimes. Oh, it's this person from maybe that show you might know on USA. No, there's Patrick Mahomes. The amount of big names that they now can bring in. Here's Kelsey. It's much bigger now, and they can shoot for that. And they're a much bigger company than they were 3-4 years ago. So I get, wanting to have people who are bigger names. I get putting Big E, because he's a hell of a talker, and he's got the experience to talk about wrestling and loves wrestling and talks in a certain way. And Wade being those are the people that belong there. That's that I completely get. And shooting big. And if that was part of the reason I got let go, I get that. I don't think it was the only reason. I think there were other forces at play, but I can't speak on that with facts, so I'm not going to. Chef Reactions, I love you too. And shout out to first name John. Yes, there's an episode for you to go watch. And Tom said, seemed therapeutic watching it. I'm glad for your mental health that you got all out there. And that is absolutely part of it as well. You can hear it in my voice a bit yesterday. That is absolutely part of this. It's not good to hold this stuff sometimes. I did it on this forum because I don't know where else I'm supposed to do it. I didn't lie about anything I said. Some people are reading it and comprehension goes out the window. And, as soon as I read "you're bitter," I'm like, okay, you're one of those people. If you listen, I don't think I'm bitter when I'm talking up a lot of other people. I could be factual, and people can go, oh, yeah, I did notice that you two didn't have any chemistry. It's right there for you. You can see it. Didn't work. She didn't want it to work. And that's okay. If you don't want to listen to me, Okay. But when our boss texts me and asks how you're doing, I'm going to be truthful. That's a fact. Those texts exist. Those conversations happened. There are absolutely other people I didn't get along with in WWE. Very small group of people. And when I say group, it's probably like 2 other people. But if I didn't work with them and there's no issue, we had clashing personalities, okay, fine. They didn't do anything to me. You just don't get along with people sometimes. That's fine. So I'm going to be truthful, and I'm going to tell you when I think someone deserves to be called out for something. And I think the real central point of that entire conversation yesterday was I made efforts to help. Those were rebuffed. I made efforts to get her into the rotation, into the mix on Raw Talk and the post shows and the bump. And there was no thank you for that. And there was no text of when I was gone. And that's a shitty thing to do. That's shitty. There were people that I worked with there that I didn't hear from. I didn't talk to them all the time. I didn't have a close relationship with them. That's okay. People get cut from that place all the time. But I will tell you, if the shoes were on the other feet, there would have been a message sent. There were messages sent to people that I wasn't close with, but I knew, hey, that's a tough period in their life. I'm going to send them a text or something like that. It's not hard to be a good person. And that's life. That's not wrestling. And I don't regret that I said that stuff. And I'm happy I said that stuff. And sometimes people need to be shown in the proper light. So if you don't like that, I don't give a shit. I don't. I'm going to continue to being honest on this show. I think I've always been honest on this show. I don't think you hear a lot of vitriol in my voice ever. I'm honest. I will critique accordingly. I will praise accordingly. I've praised WWE. I've praised AEW. I've praised TNA. I've also called out stuff I've seen. I know WWE was not happy with the fact that I talked about press conferences. I know that Dan Reichert and I said some stuff on this that was factual that certain people didn't like. If you don't like it and it's true, maybe that's on you. Thank you, Chef. Thank you, Chef. It was just nice to say that, by the way. I felt like I was working in your kitchen. Thank you, Chef. Or you just judged me on a show. Thank you, Chef. By the way, I'm going to give a shout out to our guy, Chef Reactions. He's been a very busy man, and I want to get him back on here soon. I'm going to see him in a couple months. But Chef Reactions has a new apron out. And for those of you in the cooking world that know, I'm going to look it up so I say this all correctly. And this is not a paid advertisement. This is because Chef is my friend. And I like Chef, and we take care of each other. But Chef has a new Headley and Bennett apron with an adjustable rating because he rates things out of 10. And it's now available, and you should go to his Instagram and any of his social media to go get it. There's one upstairs. And you know what? It was purchased by my fiance because we wanted to support our friend. And you should support Chef and good people too. That's what we do. I'm going to always take care of the people that want to take care of me because that's how friendships work. And that's how relationships work. And that's how even work relationships work. You're on the same team. You're fighting the same battle. Team, not family. Team, not family. Because I saw I got tagged in that Jade Cargill thing where like they put family first. And I got tagged in that she said that. And let me make this clear. I do believe that people now in WWE do get that recognition of you have a family and you have a life and, you know, we want you to take care of those things. That is different than calling work your family. Two different things because people are like, oh, Jay, don't talk that way. No, I truly believe that if she speaks up of, I want to bring my husband here, my daughter here, or I gotta take off for this, I do believe that stuff is heard more now. CM Punk did an interview, I want to say to StarCast a couple years ago with Mike Johnson. And he had talked about, I guess it came up, the idea of like Becky and Seth had gotten vacation time. And he's like, wait, that's a thing now? It's like, yeah, your families are taken care of. Like, I really appreciated the last couple of years when there was no Christmas shows. And some of them fell on Christmas or near Christmas. Or here's the best stuff. And shout out to Jackie and Corey in Rosenberg for taping those best of shows. I appreciated that. People, there was a thought of, we don't need to run this week. And you know what? I also appreciated all the wrestlers that went on the holiday tour and probably had to travel on Christmas to go to MSG or go to Toronto or go to LA. Punk and Dom wrestling. I appreciated that because I know that kept the ball moving for the company. And those are important shows. And you know what? It probably took them away. Whereas I had that week off. I got to go on vacation that week. But the team, not family, the team effort of the company made that happen. And I know I worked hours where other wrestlers didn't. That's how it works. So you're all working towards the same goal. As broadcasters, we're getting the show over. We're getting the stories over. We want to make the wrestlers bigger. I think that's such an important thing to note. Yes, you have to be good at your job. But it's not about me. It's not like even Wade and Big E. It's not about them as much as it used to be because they're talking about the stories. They're trying to get stories over. And then, hey, Wade, we need you to get in the middle of this stuff with Drew. Well, Wade's got credibility to do that. I love that Big E can speak, and I think it was the last Saudi show. And he said, he brought up Shorty G. Now, there's credibility coming from Big E to be able to bring that up. And now that guy's still probably hurting from that. I like that. But what was he doing? He's getting Chad Gable over more. If you're talking for the company and you're not a wrestler, your job is to get everything over. Bottom line, it's not about you. You're not the star. You got to be good at your job. You got to have a presentation that looks a certain way, that comes across a certain way. But it's about who you're talking about, who you're sticking that mic up to, how you react to them, how you cower to them, how you play off them. It's not about you. You want people to enjoy seeing you on your screen. People didn't know who I was for years. I got that. I knew that walking in. What the hell is the bump? I heard those clips of Brian Alvarez going like, what is the bump? What is this? They never talk about it. And they didn't. And I was on a digital show. I was on every week. But I'm not on Raw. I'm not on SmackDown. I'm not on NXT. I know that's the top of the line. Eventually, people started seeing me more. Maybe because of Big E with the Dream Match Mania clip. Maybe because I appeared on something, whatever. That was nice. Wasn't what my job was supposed to be. I went to Philadelphia. And I know I've talked about this before. I went to Philadelphia for Elimination Chamber watch-along. It's the last watch-along that ever happened in the building because COVID hits 4 days later with Rudy Gobert and shuts everything down. And I had gone to that building many, many times for wrestling as a fan. I remember being out there when Zack Ryder held a rally because he was, trying to get on the Mania or something like that. I have pictures of that. I told him that story when he was on the show, which, by the way, go watch it in the archives at thewrestlingmatchshow.com. But it was cool to walk in there working for the place, but nobody knew who I was. That was February. I had started in October. I guess I was first seen in September or October of 2019. So I'd only been there for a few months. And people didn't know me, and I walked right in, and I parked my car where all the other wrestlers and the buses were. Nobody stopped me. Why would they? That's okay. And I went, the next time I was there was for the Extreme Rules show in Philly when Bray Wyatt came back. And they had the fight pit match with Riddle and Seth Rollins. And I drove into that show and, it was just me in a car. And people saw me. And then they called me over and asked if they could take a picture and autographs. And I was so taken aback by that. Because I'm at the bottom. Like, I always considered myself as a talent there. I'm at the bottom. All the wrestlers, everybody else, all the announcers that have been there before me, Cole, Corey, Mike Rome, Kayla, Byron, like, I'm low. I'm a talent, but I'm an announcer, and I'm not someone you see all the time. I'm not on the TV shows. So I very much appreciate it when people are like, hey, can I get your picture? All that. I was like, man, that's pretty cool. The place I came to watch wrestling, I stood on the other side of that gate. Those are moments I really appreciated because I wasn't working towards them, because I didn't expect them to happen. That's pretty damn cool. It's pretty damn cool that people have followed me here. All of you that are here, or that discovered me after the fact. The amount of people that go, man, I didn't know you were gone, and now I see you here, and it's cool to hear you in a different voice. I'm allowed to have this voice because I control this. I had to talk in a certain way there because that was the job, and that was fine. Believe me, there was stuff I talked about there that sucked. But it was my job, because of who was signing my checks, to try to get it over and do my best at that. I promise you, the good stuff that you like when you saw it on TV was the easiest stuff for me to talk about. When you have to get over Vince booking or a million changes, or you can't talk about this, yeah, that's the tough part of the job. It's still an easy job because I talk about wrestling. I would talk about bad wrestling for the rest of my life if I was getting paid to do so. I'd probably get burnt out at some point, but that's not a hard job. It's not a hard job at all. It's a hell of a job. It's a job I was lucky to have, and I will still say that. I'm not there anymore. I'll probably never go back because I've been too honest. But I like being able to do this, and I like that we can have conversations on here, and I'll keep having those conversations. And as I think of stories, like, I don't come in here sometimes going, I'm going to tell this, and this story. Some stuff comes to the top of mind. Some stuff I'll be talking about. Like the Riddle watch-along thing. I just remembered that. I love reading the comments here. I love reading the comments down below because it'll jog my memory on things, or it'll start conversations. I did Bust It Open with Tommy Dreamer this morning. And I presented an idea, which I'll get to in a second, about how Mercedes and Britt went last night. And later on in the show, he's like, this is why I love this show. Because I'm the wrestler. I'm the booker. And it's my jig. Because I have one good skill in life, is to talk about and do wrestling stuff. And he said, but you have never taken a bump in your life. And you've never wrestled a match. True. Other than my backyard wrestling career in high school. But that's for a different time. And he said, I love that you came up with that story because it made sense. And that's a good example of, you don't have to do this to have an opinion on it. Now, believe me, more opinions than ever are being heard these days because of social media. And a lot of them are shit. Or a lot of them are not well thought out. I love thinking about this stuff. Sometimes you throw stuff against the wall, and I love to hear Tommy's feedback on that, or whoever I'm working with, Mark Henry, or you guys. Sometimes I'll say stuff, and I go back, oh, that was shit. That was bad. Or hell, that's a hell of an idea. I've seen that from comments, from chat, whatever. I love having those conversations. When I wasn't on the air at WWE, and I was in, I had a desk, I was talking about wrestling and fantasy booking and what if they did this? And I loved having those conversations. And honestly, it kind of got me into a flow so that when I got on the air, well, I talked about this in real life this way. How do I turn that into WWE speak? How does that translate? I would often tweet a certain way about bad booking. Not to shit on it directly, but to kind of talk around it. Oh, man, Ivar's been on a run. It's a real shame he couldn't come through tonight because he's been having some great matches. Because Ivar did have a hell of a run as a singles guy for a bit. And that was me saying, hey, they probably shouldn't have beat him. You know, he should get a shot at the Intercontinental title or something like that, where somebody's on a run and I'm like, I don't know if they're going to get a shot, but hey, you know, Ivar's been on Bronson Reed's been on a hell of a run. You know, maybe he should be in line for an IC title shot. Without knowing booking, without knowing where they're going, just using logic, reading, seeing what I see on the TV and go, hey, that guy's doing well now right now, or she's doing really well right now. They should go with that. I think it that way. I tweet it a different way. I translate into WWE speak. How can I make that part of my analysis where I'm not questioning the booking or trying to book my own stuff? Now I can say whatever I want because I'm analyzing it legitimately, not pretend. And I often said how often if I didn't know where things were going, I'd listen to commentary. What's Michael Cole saying? What's Corey saying? Where are they trying to direct this? Because that's the story. The announcers are always a great barometer for where stories are supposed to be going, where turns are supposed to be going, how people are supposed to be reacting, how they not supposed to be, how the company would like someone to be presented. Listen to commentary. You can tell so much from commentary. And if I didn't know how to talk about something and I didn't get a direction, I'm going on Raw Talk or SmackDown Lowdown or The Bump. How is this story being told by Michael Cole? Okay, I can see where they want to go. And sometimes we would get direction on that. Hey, don't talk about this, talk about this. You know, when Roman had his reign going on and all those days, I got an email from Michael Cole, which I'm sure came from higher creative or Kevin Dunn or Vince or whoever it was. Don't talk about anybody else's numbers in terms of their runs. It's only about Roman. And this is a time where Gunther was on a ridiculous run. And Bianca Belair was champ for a year. So, okay, we can't talk about the days, but I could say, wow, she's defended that many times in the last year. I could still talk about it in the same way, but I have to present it differently because the whatever 1,000 days, when we're talking about days of long reigns, that's only for Roman. Well, that's dumb, but okay. Well, listen, Gunther's turned back everybody that he has faced. And then I would just name channel with Shinsuke Nakamura and Rey Mysterio and Ricochet. There's a way to still get that point across. And I listen to all commentary that way, and I listen to AEW commentary that way. And some things I can tell, okay, they know this is coming. They want to get to this. Tommy made a good point about something last night. And I'll try to transition this into Dynamite now. But there was a spot last night where, like, Camille got seen by the ref, and she shouldn't have, and probably should have been a DQ. And they let it go. And nobody said anything on commentary because it, probably shouldn't have happened. And then later on, you hear Excalibur call out Stephon Smith for something good he did. And Tommy said, well, now you've drawn attention to the referee about stopping a DQ or whatever it may be, but you ignored the other one. And he said, I don't want to be the referee, please. And I agree with that. If it's not addressed on commentary and they're letting something, just stay in the moment. Just stay there. People were pissed about MJF and Ospreay wrestling all over the place. You know what? It was a title match. They didn't like each other. Nobody wanted to see it end in a count out. That crowd had no interest in that being a count. You let it go. How many Attitude Era main events went all over the place and bells and who cares? Unless it's expressly stated. Darby and Hangman fought up the ramp the other night. And Darby does the coffin drop. They went out there for 4 or 5 minutes. The action was good. It's wrestling. I understand addressing the rules. I understand when something like Damian Priest not kicking out, you can't ignore it. And when Tommy and I talked about that today, because he actually told me how much he hated press conferences. Like, oh, Tommy, if you only knew. And Priest didn't kick out, and They didn't, Hunter addressed it in the press conference, but it didn't go anywhere. Randy and Gunther have a title match in a couple of weeks because of a finish that didn't go correctly. And guess what? It's a hell of a story. And it makes sense. His shoulder wasn't down. Do they want Gunther to have a blemish on his record after the way they've booked him? Hell no. So spin it into a positive. Hunter addressed it as soon as it was over. Referee decision is final. Randy will get another shot at some point. And guess what? We saw him on Raw last week, and we're getting Randy and Gunther at Bash at Berlin for the World Heavyweight Championship. I don't think anybody's pissed off about that. The other thing, and you know why I know people aren't pissed off about that? Because I listen. I've talked to you how I don't love the Liv, Dom, Rhea stuff. But I listen, and I hear the crowd with it, and I hear the pops and the boos, and I see that every one of their videos that has been their main story each week has done 1 million views. Guess what? That's working. You don't have to like everything you're watching, but somebody else will. Raw this week. I saw WrestleNomics reported that the biggest number on the show came from American Made and Alpha Academy. Interesting. Now, there's a few segments that went over 2 million viewers, and I do think that top acts will carry the show. Stone Cold carried a lot of the Attitude Era. There's a lot of crap on there. But he's the main character, and people tuned in to see him. They're going to stick around for him. You sprinkle him in throughout the show. You promote your main event accordingly. Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest are major characters in the show. Their stuff is doing well. It bleeds into seeing other people. Maybe you could look at that number and go, as our moderator just posted, Otis might be a draw for us. Or, maybe people wanted to see the Wyatt Six come out and continue what they were doing with American Made. Dreamer talked to me today. He goes, I was doing WWE CW stuff, and I wasn't getting a push, and I knew what my ratings were, and I took him to Vince and go, hey, if you're such a businessman, why aren't you following the business here? Makes sense. And there are people that I love, that I watched, and I look at their rating and go, ooh, that bombed. Timothy Thatcher, hell of a mat wrestler. Not much of a talker. Not much of a promo guy. Was on NXT a lot. Didn't draw for shit. That's a bummer because I liked it. But guess what? He wasn't connecting. And Gunther actually just talked about that recently. Talked about Thatcher and said, hey, maybe if he changed his ways a bit, he'd be a bigger star. And I think you need to think about that. I think Chad Gable is a prime example of that. I think it's pretty clear. You guys know I like that. I like Chad Gable. Chad Gable had great matches with Jason Jordan in NXT. Tag matches. Outstanding stuff. And they brought him to Raw, or they brought him to SmackDown, and you had Shorty G stuff. You had, him with Shelton, any of those. Great wrestler. I love watching him, but it wasn't clicking. When did Chad Gable start to click? Thank you. And shoosh. He elevated his game. Him and Otis were put together to be a boring tag team. Here, I'll tell you this. Otis hated that. Hated it. Basically, they were said, you're a blank slate. You're just a machine. You're a tool for Chad Gable to wreck people. Otis is a heel. And then what happened? And they brought it back around. And those two guys who live on the same block as each other and had chemistry and had a friendship that predates WWE by a long time is now coming out on camera. And they're doing the stuff with RK Bro. That spelling bee, all ridiculous, dumb. But people reacted to it, and they loved it, and it gave Kevin Owens somebody to play off of, and it put Kevin Patrick in the middle as the straight man. That's not wrestling. It is, you know what? It is wrestling, though. It's not wrestling matches. It is wrestling. And Chad Gable now, because of the catchphrase that turned them babyface, and then now you're seeing a wider range of what he's able to accomplish, gets a new contract, gets a new stable, and is being put in a position to help get a major act over. And he's doing that. Because he understands what his job is. And you know what? That's a hell of a job to have. It's why Miz will be employed forever. It's why Austin Theory, who probably hasn't gotten to the level that the company would have liked. But you know what? When you need somebody to take a hell of a choke slam from Jelly Roll, I guarantee Austin Theory got a million pats on the back after that. Because he made that happen. Because he did the stuff with McAfee and The Rock. And then what did he do? They're gone. I'm the 150 million hit man. Of course he is. Of course, that's a heel. He plays into that. I don't know if people will ever get behind him in the way the company wants them to get behind him. He's got to figure that out. But when asked to do things, he does them well in those spots, and that's valuable. And Miz does that stuff. Miz can host SummerSlam. Miz can host WrestleMania. He can take bumps from Snoop Dogg. He can be on TV shows. He can hell, I would be. That's if I'm in NXT, I'm watching guys like that because that keeps you employed. Winning one of those. Yeah, the company's behind you. It doesn't mean you're going to hit big or going to stay up there. But if you become reliable for the company and do what you're supposed to do and play your role correctly, whatever that may be, that goes a long way. And I think that's a lesson to take if you're watching any kind of wrestling. And looking at that. Why are these people on so much? Well, they do everything they're supposed to do. They hit their times. They're reliable. We don't have to worry about them. That's why Matt Riddle's not in the company anymore. They didn't want to invest in him anymore. It wasn't worth it. I think it's a little bit different now in terms of, these negotiations seem to come down to the wire. Back in the day, they'd hit you up months and months ahead of time because they want to sign you, because they want to know that they can invest in you. T-shirts, time on screen, a push, whatever it may be. Well, if we only have them for a couple more months, we don't know if they're going to go to another place or leave the company. We're not going to invest that time. We're not going to invest that money in them. That seems to be different now. Because I think they know, well, if you're not around, we'll move on to somebody else. And I also think, like the stuff with Gable, did he sign it or not? Like, the amount of push he got tells me he probably signed before people realized. Let's get into Dynamite. Now, here, Nerdy Dude's got something. Let's put that up. And thank you for the massive super chat, Nerdy Dude. Okay, hey, Matt, I have a question I sent the Wrestling Matt DM over Twitter, including a link to an AEW short. Was it passed down to you yet? It's for their All-In documentary. It seems like it was shot last year. Any thoughts? I do believe, and I want to watch that. I know there was a trailer for the documentary for last year's All-In, which seems like a good idea. Now, obviously, there was controversy over last year's All-In with Jack Perry and CM Punk. But I like, it should be a way to promote their show for this year. I saw Samoa Joe in it, hyping up the locker room. And I was like, oh, I know that guy right there. I know that Joe would do that kind of thing. So, I'm looking forward to seeing that documentary. And I think it's any kind of promotion is good. So let's get into Dynamite. And I want to start with MJF because MJF, the streak is over, did not open the show. He was not on the show in any kind of physical or backstage way last night. Now, he's been doing, and with so much else going on this week, we haven't talked about it, but he wrestled Michael Oku, who seems like he might be getting signed along with his fiance very soon, who is tight with Ospreay. And Michael Oku and MJF wrestled for the American Championship at Rev Pro, which is a pretty big indie in the UK area, if you don't know about it. And there's a good working relationship there with AEW. And that's nice. They have it too. So MJF wins and all that, and he hits the Tiger Driver, and Ospreay runs out, which is a nice surprise. And that's a great time from a promotion standpoint to do that because you have promoted MJF. He's on that show. You've promoted the big name. It's cool to know, hey, we've sold the tickets already because we have MJF, and not just him, but he was the big name on the show. People wouldn't expect anybody else to show up, and there was Ospreay. And you didn't have to promote him. And the surprise was a nice surprise for the Rev Pro promotion, for the fans in attendance, and on top of all of that, you promoted this, right? August 11th. It happened this past weekend. Oku is a draw for Rev Pro. MJF is a global draw because he's a weekly television cable wrestler. But you get Ospreay in there as a surprise. There is an element of, oh my God, I got to come to the next show. Who knows who will show up? And it also allowed AEW to build that story while MJF was over there and doing plenty of media and having fun with the media and doing exactly what I said they needed to do. Bryan Danielson over there, MJF over there. The big stars needed to be doing the media to pound the pavement, to get ticket sales, to get them into maybe that 50,000 range, which is going to be a challenge. 45 is a hell of a number. It's not a bad number. It's not what they did last year, and I get that. But 45 is a hell of a number. I think they want those Cardiff sales up, and we'll get to that in a second because they announced a pretty big match for that show for next week. But Rev Pro got something out of that, and AEW got something out of that, and they were able to turn it into a video package. And I want to start right there because I have certainly been critical of AEW Social and some of the things I think they've missed. And I think they've gotten way better at that. And I thought the video packages last night were fantastic. I thought the Mariah May thing, my God, did that hit all the right notes. Her lines were so good. We're both going to die, but I get to write your eulogy. It accomplished so much without either of them actually being on the show. MJF not being on the show, the last U.S. North American soil show before All In, was a tough choice. But that was good. That made sense. There was a lot of good video packages last night. And sometimes you don't have to have the people on the show. It's not about bumps. It's not about matches. So let's talk about the top of the show. And Amir, I will get to that, I promise, after we finish Dynamite. And I appreciate your super chat there. As always, super chats will get answered. And if it's within the context of what we're talking about, they get answered right away. Amir, we will get to that. And thank you for the super chat. So Mercedes, Sheeta, and Britt, good match on paper, delivered. Here's where it fell short for me. You figured Britt's going to come out, right? So they do the thing where Camille's looking for her, and then she looks and sees the Sting mask, and she does a great neck whip over the top, and then starts putting the boots, and not great-looking boots, to someone who wasn't Britt. And then they go to this wide shot, and you see Britt coming through the crowd, which I don't think they needed to show. And it's almost like she got a late cue because then she gets on the apron and she's got to get the glove out, and Mercedes turns around before the glove's on, so she's got to turn back around. And right there, you've taken me out of it. Because why is Mercedes looking here? She's already got to act dumb enough, and I hate when that takes too long. And then she sees her. It's like, oh. Like she didn't even double take. It was just, oh, I got to look this way. She's not ready yet. And then she puts on the glove because she wants to put the lockjaw on her. And Camille bails her out after what? She hit one kick. She ducked. All I would have done is have Camille completely preoccupied with the beatdown on the outside and continue to lay it in because you think it's Britt and you think it's Britt and you think it's Britt and stay on her. And Mercedes, yeah. And then, miss, loses it. Britt picks it up, hits her once. Now we got it. Now Mercedes is stunned. She's hurt. Here's a chance. Now, with her down, bring out the glove, put it on. Let the people pop for that. As she's going to get the lockjaw on Mercedes, now Camille runs in and saves her. And they did that anyway. But it just, Dreamer called it a first down, not a touchdown. I think that was even being nice. It didn't flow well. I don't think there's as much juice to this match as there should be. However, when Britt came back at Forbidden Door to set this match up, I knew it felt big. It's a match she's been talking about when you go back to even when Mercedes became available. It belongs on All In. The build has not been as strong as I would hope, but they can, and I believe will absolutely deliver on the pay-per-view. I'll give you 2 examples of matches that completely exceeded horrible builds. Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar, WrestleMania 31. Think of the go-home show. They're wrestling over they look like 2 4-year-olds wrestling over a toy because they weren't sharing. And then they had a hell of a match, and then Seth did the cash-in. And that's what people remember. Sure, they remember the tug-of-war, but whatever. Bianca and Sasha is a god-awful dog shit build because they're involving Reggie too much, and Mercedes said it recently. There was supposed to be like a love story with that, and it was dumb. And then Bianca and Sasha make their entrances. It's the main event of the first night of that WrestleMania. There's excitement. People are on their feet for the bell. They're both crying and everything that happened got wiped away. Vince's shitty creative didn't matter because they put 2 big-time superstars in the ring, and that moment was enough. You want good builds, believe me. You want to sell pay-per-views. You want to sell Peacock subscriptions. You want to sell tickets. But if they come through in the ring, that's what matters. And I will say one thing. They showed the segment with the delay, with the glove, and they put it up on social. I wouldn't have done that. I would have edited that because you can hide that shit. Anytime you see a mess up in wrestling, the next time you see that, you can hide that. You can hide that by showing a different camera angle. You can speed it up, whatever. That segment from last night will now live on, and it can live on however the company wants to present it. And they could easily cut out that delay. They can speed that up. And I, you know what? I have the faith that they will do that. If there is a video package to show the whole feud, they won't show that there was a delay in that glove getting put on. They won't show that. They shouldn't show that. There's no reason to. You show what you need to show. I wouldn't have put that clip up as it happened last night. I still think they can fix it. Hangman and Lethal. Once again, playing to the chaotic brain and mindset of Hangman. They're cutting the promo. Jay seemed more fired up than usual. Hangman attacks him, and here we go. And I thought it was one of Jay's best effort in a long time. Because I think he had more to sink his teeth into. And, of course, Hangman won. Are we getting that Jeff Jarrett Hangman match? Come on. Let's go. Orange Cassidy defeating Kyle and Roddy for the number 1 spot in the gauntlet. Pinning Kyle. Okay. And for those that don't know, the gauntlet goes until someone wins. So, Roddy got a title match off the fact that he was supposed to be the next person in the last Casino Gauntlet. And he didn't get in time because the match ended. And you don't know how long who's going to enter and how long the match will go. So because Orange is now number 1, he has the best chance to win because he gets every opportunity to get a pin or a submission on it. He's in there the longest. It's the opposite of the Rumble where you want to come out last because everybody has to get eliminated. The Casino Battle, the Casino Gauntlet is the opposite. It could end within the first 2 people in there. And I love the concept of that. And I you know what? Props to Props to AEW for creating that match. Pac not wrestling at Wembley. What? Cannot believe that. But he will wrestle it All Out because they're going to have a pay-per-view 2 weeks after All In. Last year it was back-to-back weeks, which is tough. This year they moved it for Taylor Swift, so she could work Wembley. Only the big names work in Wembley. Taylor Swift, MJF, Will Ospreay, Tony Storm, Hook. Only the big names work Wembley. But he challenges the winner of Ospreay and MJF for the international or American title for All Out. So you got to, that's the thing. You got a pay-per-view 2 weeks after Wembley. You got to build to that. So he set that up. Also for next week, Claudio and Okada had the face-off. Claudio cut a solid promo. Okada laughs him off. And I didn't think it was super goofy Okada. I thought it was, he was talking down to Claudio, and he did the heart thing, and then he called him a bitch, and Claudio got in his face. And then Claudio went, I don't want that guy. I don't want that Okada. I want the guy who, as he just said, is the best tournament wrestler of all time. I want the guy who owned the G1. I love that Claudio cut that promo. I'm bummed that's not happening on the pay-per-view, but we're going to see it next week in Cardiff for Dynamite. And it's a hell of a match on paper. Oh, my goodness. The Young Bucks over the Acclaimed. Here, I had an issue with this because when Darby came out, and I kind of skipped over this, Jack Perry ran out and attacked him from behind. So they've done the tunnel attack from behind. And then the Young Bucks come out, and the Acclaimed do the exact same thing. Now, there was a way to make that not seem repetitive, and that is by leaning into it. And I don't think that happened enough on commentary. And correct me if I'm wrong, and I didn't hear it correctly. But all they had to say was, well, Jack Perry of the Elite, he did it to Darby Allin, and now the Acclaim's doing it to Young Bucks. None of these people like each other. They got to keep their head on a swivel. That would have been a way to cover that, and they didn't do it. And they had the match they had, and it was fine. Billy Gunn coming out to get a pop and then getting thrown out. A lot of focus on a guy who is not in the match and is a producer. And I get Billy Gunn gets pops, but it shouldn't happen when the focus is on the four guys that are in the ring. And they do the DQ finish, which they never do in AEW. And they did it a little too straight. He spits and he hits him. Dax hits Matt or Nick, whatever it was. No, he shouldn't care. He cost Acclaimed the tag titles. And I see Christopher Daniels right there watching in the back with Renee. And he's like, well, that shouldn't be how it is. We're going to do the Acclaimed against FTR in an eliminator at Collision, and the winner gets the Bucks. So, Chris, are you going to address the fact that you were laying at their feet at Blood and Guts and the whole coin flip thing? Nope. Okay, gotcha. Close that gap in the story. Please close that gap in the story. Please, please, please. If he can make matches and Tony can make matches and Tony can overrule the Bucks on the Mercedes suspension, then why? I need a power. Give me the flow chart. How does that work? How does that work? It's an easy thing to at least address. And the fact that the Bucks were smug after the fact tells me we're probably going to get a double pin and they'll set up a three-way, maybe with a ladder involved or something like that. I'm just guessing at All In. And that's fine. I think at this point you have to include both teams. Hook Jericho stuff, whatever. Jericho was always going to be on the card because they've been promoting Fozzy, I think, before they even promoted the pay-per-view. Whatever. He'll beat Jericho. At least he should. Swerve over Yuta. Now, continuing the story, Danielson gets a great video package. It was cool to see all the different clips. I love seeing Wrestling Road Diaries in it. Colt's first of, I think, 3 Wrestling Road Diaries. It's so damn good. Go find it. I don't know if it's on coltcabana.com or wherever you can go watch for high spots. It is a great documentary. And it's around the time Danielson's heading to WWF, whatever. He was never an F. And then he's in like the front row. So he's not ringside. He's watching the match. And Swerve takes care of Yuta. And Swerve's still getting pops, but he does a Bryan beatdown. Bryan comes to save him. And they cut the promo, and I'm going to cripple you. And they're leaning into Swerve's edge. And you know what? He can be a heel for the next couple of weeks. I'll get to that in a second. Because then he comes down at the end, and he hits a house call. And now there is that level of physicality. And while he might have respect for Bryan, you do that, now you're a piece of shit. And I mean that in a good way. And I know there's people like, well, they still cheer him. He's still a babyface. You know what? Here's what they can do with that. If you still want Swerve to be a babyface, after All In, he can continue to act like he did last night. And that can lead into the rest of the week and next week and all that. And whether, I would guess he loses, or even if he wins, the next promo he cuts is, listen, I'm not going to give this away leading into the match. I'm not going to give away my plan. But I knew I had to do everything in my power leading up to the match and in the match to defeat Bryan Danielson, whose career was on the line. In his last shot to win a title he has not been able to win. That's why I did that stuff. It wasn't personal. Think about UFC or boxing when everybody's talking shit, whether it's Floyd or Conor, if he ever fights again. And they're like, it was just for the show. Like Jake Paul, Mike Tyson, it's wrestling. You got to sell pay-per-views. You got to sell the buys. You got to sell the audience. You do that by talking. Chael Sonnen fought far past his prime because he could talk people into seeing him get his ass kicked. Swerve is going to say everything he needs to say and do everything he needs to do because of the respect he has for how good Bryan Danielson is. And if he says that after the fact, listen, I'm not above or I'm not below doing any of that stuff because I got to keep my title. But I'm doing that because I respect how good Bryan Danielson is. And that's just positioning his motives, and that is just positioning his thought process. If he's like, I did that because I can, well, then he's a heel. If he says, I did that because I had to, because I knew I needed every possible advantage to defeat one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. And he could still have that kind of conversation if he loses. And Bryan goes, hey, I understand. Bryan got hit with a guitar by Jeff Jarrett because Jeff was trying to get him ready for Swerve. And then they both had their hand raised at the end of the night, and Jeff said he's ready. And Bryan knew it wasn't personal. He knew Jeff had to do what he had to do to get him ready. And I would think if Swerve cuts that kind of promo after the match, it's understood. It wasn't personal. I don't hate you, but I need to keep this title, or I needed to try to keep this title. Swerve can absolutely be still a babyface with an edge. And showing reverence to Daniel Bryan does not take that away from him, and in fact would get him back to being more of a clear-cut babyface. So I didn't have a problem with the segment, and you're positioning Swerve where he needs to be positioned. He has to come off as a very dangerous and credible threat to the end of the career of Bryan Danielson. And it's working. And the sympathy for Bryan Danielson continues to build. And we'll probably sell more tickets. And because people really do truly believe, and I believe it is a toss-up, that we could be seeing the end of Bryan Danielson's in-ring career in 2 Sundays. I didn't think Shawn Michaels' career was going to be over when he faced The Undertaker. And then I remember they were doing one of those, the vlogs or those picture diaries. And like the night before I went, oh my God, he might be done tomorrow. And then he lost to Undertaker. And then he was done. And then they did the segment on Raw, and he was actually done. And yeah, he came back for a 7-figure payday, but he was done. Like Shawn Michaels, as an active, regular competitor, was done. And I don't think they went over the top in selling that. And I think it started to come into really play like the last couple days before he faced Taker at the second Mania at 26. And I think AEW is leaning into that. And you want to make sure people know, hey, you need to buy this pay-per-view. You need to buy a ticket. You need to be able to watch this because maybe the greatest wrestler of all time is having his final match next weekend, and it's happening here, and you need to see that. So here's good riddance time of your life. Let's lean into every kind of thing that you would see when someone's career is coming to a close. And he might be done. And you know what? I can't wait to watch that match because I might get to see the last match of one of the greatest wrestlers I've ever seen. And that is a hell of a selling point. So, that was Dynamite. Now, want to go back. Dom, can you put up that super chat if you have it there from Amir, who did a very nice thing in giving us that? I think I got it. There it is. Thank you. Amir, your thoughts on Carlito, and thank you for I don't know what TRY is, but it's $49.99, and that sounds like a big number to me. My thoughts on Carlito. I think Carlito is exceeding my expectations for this run in WWE. I think he got that great pop in Puerto Rico, and I don't think that they took advantage of that quickly enough. And then he came back, and then he was in LWO, and then he turned on them, and then he ends up with Judgment Day because he's buddies with Dom. I don't know if the effort has always been there for Carlito. I think he has coasted. I think that, storyline with Ric Flair when Rick called him out was a shoot. And I've heard that, and other people have said that as well, where it's like, hey, you're good, but you should be better. Why aren't you trying to make yourself better? I think he's playing the role he should be playing. He can take bumps. He could be kind of goofy. He could be funny. People know who he is. He is getting more than I would have expected out of a run in WWE in 2023 and 2024. Totally fine. Good worker when he wants to be. And maybe there is something to that where he knows how to pick his spots. I once told a story, I think, on the show. I called a match at House of Hardcore on WrestleMania weekend in New Orleans, which I think was 34. It wasn't the 31. It was 34. After NXT was over, we go on the air, and we're on whatever the hell it was, Twitch. And I watched MVP and Carlito, who were booked because of their name value, basically put on a Shakespearean performance. I believe MVP called it performance art. And they stalled, and they yelled at each other, and they talked, and I don't think they took any bumps. And it's because they didn't need to. And they worked smart, not harder. And I think that's Carlito's career. And you know what? It's made him a lot of money, and he's on TV every Monday on a show that's kicking ass, and he's part of a group that's in one of the top storylines in the company. So I would say Carlito is doing quite well. Thank you for that super chat. Now, here's what you got coming up. If you are, put up the membership graphic if you could, Dom, very quickly here because we wrap up today's program. And thank you for so many new viewers for joining us. If you're at the Matt Camper level or higher, as a Matt member, you are getting my top 5 John Cena matches ever. Not an easy group to cut down to 5. That is at 5 Eastern if you're at the Matt Camper level or the Matt Event level. Tomorrow, my top 5 childhood wrestlers, and a lot of talk of wrestling nostalgia. And I hope you guys can share those wrestlers with me as well in the comment section. That's going up today and tomorrow. Cena today, tomorrow. The top 5 childhood wrestlers who I grew up watching, who my favorites were. 5 o'clock today, 5 o'clock tomorrow, Eastern time. But you can watch it whenever you want if you're a Matt Camper or Matt Event level member. And if you're not yet, here you go. You can sign up right now. Go down below. Bring me back up, Don. Let me do the point thing where I point down. There's Todd. Right there. Hit the join button. Become a Matt member. Come back tomorrow. Send us a super chat. Whatever you'd like to do. We'd love to have you. And I thank all the new viewers who tuned in because of things I said in the last couple of days. We say this stuff all the time. I am happy to take your questions. Once again, if you are a Matt member of any level, the members-only AMA is going to be Ask Me Anything August 26th, right after our live edition of The Wrestling Mat, which comes to you every single weekday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Now, there is some breaking news, and I'm going to cover it very quickly here, but we'll get into it more tomorrow. And that is just announced by AEW. Tony said there'd be some big announcements coming. This is a big one. AEW All In is going to be held in Texas on Saturday, July 12th, 2025 at Global Life Field, which I believe is where the Texas Rangers play. So a big stadium show in Texas. They have certainly found a fan base for those collision shows and the residency they're doing, and I would bet that that comes back next year. So there you go. Big announcement for AEW. Another big show, the Talk of Australia. That's all great news for wrestling fans. More companies thriving, being able to put more people in seats and present more big things. That's great for wrestling across the board, and that is something that does indeed trickle down. So, nice little piece of news there. We'll talk about that a lot more tomorrow on our Friday edition of the Wrestling Mat. Every weekday, 1 p.m. Eastern. If you're new watching on X, please come subscribe over here on YouTube at thewrestlingmatshow.com. It's always right above our good friend Todd. And please continue to join us. Continue to watch all of our content. We have so much of it. And if you want to ask me more questions about people I worked with or the bump or any stories, come to that AMA in a couple of weeks on 8/26 and become a Mat member. You could be part of that. So much more to come right here on the Wrestling Mat. I appreciate you for being with me. Please come back tomorrow. Please go back and watch our shorts, our Instagram reels at WrestlingMat23. Send me your tweets. I've gotten a lot of them today. Keep sending more. Love to hear from you. Love to talk about this. It's the most interactive pro wrestling show out there, and I'll be back to talk about wrestling even more. I'll see you tomorrow at 1 right here on the Wrestling Mat.